We have another amazing, beautiful organization with us today. We all know how fun uniting families can be, but for some, it can also be very life-changing. Our next guests know exactly what that means because they unite families, which is important, but they specialize in bridging the gap between child welfare advocates and the technology needed to help children in foster care find their extended family. It's beautiful. Now, the CEO and co-founder, Jennifer Jacobs, she worked as a nuclear physicist and a White House fellow before pursuing the call to help kids in foster care. I'm thinking of her hair because she just told me she keeps a pencil in her hair all the time. That's what nuclear physicists do. And Jessica Stern is the COO. She was a management professional and a former foster child herself before her passion to help children from similar backgrounds led her to become the co-founder of this organization. These amazing women have dedicated their lives to help children and teens make connections that honestly have altered the courses of these kids' lives. We are excited and we're honored to have with us today these amazing women. Please help me welcome to the stage Jennifer and Jessica of Connect Our Kids.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Jennifer Jacobs. I'm an Army veteran, a nuclear engineer, and a physicist by training. I've spent most of my career working to counter nuclear terrorism until I met Jessica.
I'm Jessica Stern. I have a background in philanthropy and communications. A few years ago, I was awarded the Key to the City in Destin, Florida, for organizing volunteers to support the World Food Program, which led to feeding more than 50,000 people locally and globally. Organizing that effort led to running political campaigns and service in state government, until I met Jennifer.
12 years ago, I was still focused on tracking nuclear material floating around the globe when I read a Time magazine article about foster care. And I noticed a similarity in what foster care professionals needed to do to find families for the kids in their care, and the tools that intelligence analysts use to find and track terrorist networks. I realized, though, that while the intel space has multi-million-dollar software with data search and management tool capabilities, social workers doing the same kinds of work have Post-it notes and Microsoft Word. So Jessica and I spent the next 6 years learning about foster care, especially about how social workers find and engage families. We learned that many of us have a misunderstanding about children in foster care. They're not usually effectively orphans. They have people. The challenge is finding those people and asking them to help. This can be resource intensive, especially if you have to use Post-it notes and Excel spreadsheets to keep track of it. To see what this would be like for a social worker, I created a large family tree of my own family using online tools, but I found that I had to use paper to accomplish what a social worker really needs to do, showing all the family at once. Can any of you relate to this? Right? Eventually, I decided that bringing innovative intelligence tools to foster care would be my next mission.
Yes. When I met Jennifer, I was preparing to start my own family and had been thinking a lot about my mother and what kind of mother I would be. And that's when I realized that I knew very little about my own mother. You see, when 1 week after she died from breast cancer, my 7 brothers and sisters and I were separated and placed into 3 different foster homes. My family, as I knew it, was gone, and almost every memory of my mother had disappeared. I was just 10 years old. In an effort to learn more about her and the decisions made following her death, I reached out to extended family members that I did not get to grow up around, as well as the community of my hometown, St. Mary's, Ohio. These candid conversations led to discoveries that shaped me as a mother and the work that I do today. As it turns out, my mother, Rita, was an adoring kind of mother. But because we were living in poverty, many people stepped in to help when tragedy struck our large family, illustrating what can happen when family and community comes together to support children during the most difficult moments of their life. This newly discovered information led to an understanding, and it gave me the ability to step into motherhood with confidence and joy.
So we decided that the foster care space needed a dynamic software platform to help bring the power of family and community to children in foster care. We combined the concept of my broad visual, my paper tree allowed, with the counterterrorism software and online family search tool functionalities, and we made it into this.
Yeah. And in partnership with the most forward-leaning child welfare professionals in America, we built a platform that scales up the same kind of practices that me and my family benefited from all those years ago, using technology to pull in thriving extended family members and community support with speed and precision that we have never seen before in this world. We are creating connection and belonging for all of our kiddos who need it the most.
Thank you. So our software now helps kids in care stay connected or reconnect with their family members and natural supports. Genealogy is making life-changing differences for children who become disconnected from their people through no fault of their own. Your work in genealogy helps build connections that could completely change a young person's life. Here's what that looks like. Calvin, a 17-year-old in foster care in Oregon, didn't know anyone from his biological family, or even anything about his own family. He'd never had a visit, a call, even a card from someone he was related to in his whole life. So he'd come to believe that he'd been thrown away. He was trash. Because what other explanation really made sense? His social worker was worried about him. He'd be on his own in just a year, and he didn't have any family connections. She was one of our first users during our pilot 3 years ago. And pretty quickly, she was able to locate Calvin's paternal grandmother, who, it turned out, still had pictures of Calvin as a toddler on her wall. He hadn't been thrown away. He'd been lost. Like many others, when Calvin was removed from his family and taken into the child welfare system, all his connections were severed. He'd gone into a black hole, and his family, not just his parents, but all his family, were not allowed contact. They didn't even know where he was. And Calvin learned that not only had he not been thrown away, but he had actually been named for the family's hero when he was born, his great-grandfather, who had been a respected law enforcement officer. So for Calvin, discovering his family's history and his role in it was a difference in understanding that he was not trash, but was instead so treasured that he'd been given the most important name in the family. That he was so treasured that even though he disappeared, his family held on to what they had, those pictures on the wall, hoping that one day they would be reunited.
One of our favorite stories comes out of Ohio. Tammy was pregnant, about to turn 21, which meant she would have to leave the extended foster care program and likely move to a homeless shelter with her infant. Because Tammy came from a dissolved adoption, her paperwork didn't have any information about her biological family. So her independent coach helped Tammy take a DNA test. The results of those tests offer names, but they don't offer phone numbers or email addresses. So, like a good detective, her coach used our software to organize results and find contact information. They quickly found an email for an aunt, and Tammy sent off a shaky request to connect. Within a week, a week. Tammy's relatives were in her apartment with diapers, baby gifts, and messages support. We didn't know, they said. In over 18 years, no one had ever contacted them.
So these stories are just two of those of the 500,000 children and families caught up in foster care. Not all of them have the type of happy reunion endings that we've just described. But with your help, we can change that. Long-term foster care can have disastrous outcomes. By age 26, 2/3 of those who leave foster care without ever finding that promised forever family have experienced homelessness, incarceration, or they are dead. If they remain disconnected, these young adults die at 10 times the rate of their peers. Without the supportive connections and family that humans need to survive, disconnected youth in foster care can easily fall victim to human traffickers. In fact, the foster care system inadvertently creates the very conditions that traffickers seek out: emotional isolation of their victim with no one really paying attention to what they're doing. In the two stories we told, Calvin and Tammy got the chance to reunite, to rebuild. They are getting the opportunity to learn old stories and create new ones, breaking the cycle of trauma for themselves and their families. Unfortunately, that's not always the reality for most of these kids, but it could be. These stories highlight the importance of what you all do. When you build out your family tree and you share it online, you are helping put together connections and unite or reunite families. And for some children, it can even be the difference between life and death.
We would like to share one more story that inspired us to launch our small but very mighty nonprofit organization. In the beginning days of exploration, we came across a gentleman by the name of Jelani Freeman, an accomplished lawyer, an influential member of multiple boards, a community servant who signed on immediately to be one of our first advisors at Connect Our Kids. This is one of the only pictures of Jelani as a child because no one bothered to keep his pictures while he was growing up in the government's custody. At the age of 18, Jelani aged out of the foster care system and then went on to spend the next 10 years of his life looking for his biological family. From Jelani's guidance and experience, we now have the power to make sure every child knows who they are and where they come from. We're grateful Jelani is with us here today. Johnny, would you please stand? Also, we love you, Jelani. Also, we have our entire amazing team of advisors here with lived experience in foster care. Y'all, please stand up. This thoughtful group of leaders, they are going to change the foster care experience for the next generation. It's a sincere honor to do this work with you. Thank you.
Thank you. We envision a future where every child is connected to a caring, supportive family from whom they draw strength. Early evidence suggests that children who know their family stories, who know how their people, whoever that may be for them, have handled successes and failures, how they made decisions, what kind of friends they were, these children have a greater ability to handle their own triumphs and hardships, daily struggles and decisions. From the earliest times, humans have been creatures of stories and connection. Children in foster care are no different. They need their own stories and connection just as much as any of us do, because knowing where you come from heals trauma and creates resilience. And all of you can help make that happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.